Going on, Jerome's got a handful of random Vikings as well as NFL tidbits I want to go through. So the Thursday morning news dump. Let's talk about it, man. So first up, the quarterback documentary has taken over. We've already done our review of episode 1, and it's fantastic with Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, as well as Marcus Mariota, and Sam Munson pointing something out, which is really interesting. Whether it's NFL Films or Omaha, these shows all end up using PA on the mic's calls for Vikings highlights. He is one of the best voices in the game. The guy has some phenomenal calls every year, and it's absolutely true, where the Vikings have been in some very high leverage spots, and his calls have been fantastic. Like his calls of the Bills games, his calls of the Colts game, his call of the Minneapolis Miracle, of course, iconic. His call of Blair Ball Shank at the bank. PA, I mean, I feel like to a degree, Vikings fans, we almost take PA for granted because he has such a unique backstory where he came up as a horse racing announcer, which he still is at Canterbury Park. And then he was Jesse Ventura's newsboy when Jesse had a show on K-Fan. And then eventually he rose up at the Fan, eventually became the voice of the Vikings, and everything else is history. Like, you don't see that anymore. Like, all the play-by-play announcers now are very buttoned up and polished, and they're from, like, Northwestern or Syracuse or the big J journalism schools, and they make their bones that way, or they're the son of a famous announcer, all that stuff. PA is super unique. He is unabashedly a homer, and I love his enthusiasm. For my money, like he's the GOAT, a radio play-by-play announcer in the National Football League. And then so this is great. Marcus Whitman, TFG Football. So what NFL Network does in the off season is players will get to pick games or documentaries, for programming, right? So they get a block, and you can pick some games of you yourself or your team, or documentaries like America's Game, Football Life, that old stuff. And it was great. So Amon St. Brown, the pride of USC, Detroit Lions star receiver. I think he's severely underrated. For my money, he's the second best receiver in the NFC North. But Amon St. Brown picking the Packers with one of, if not the greatest playoff collapses in NFL history for his Player's Choice game on NFL Network, is one of the greatest trolls from a rival player I think I've ever seen. So, of course, this is the game where the NFC title game where the Packers, they had a big lead, and it looks like they're headed to the Super Bowl, and then not so much. Then Seattle goes and takes it. It's fantastic. It's also screwing up the onside kick. Brandon Bostic, former Vikings legend. Woo, all that stuff. But it is pretty good. And it's low-key, great troll. I respect the hell out of Amon-Ra, both for his play on the field as well as his trolling ability. Speaking of teams that used to be in the NFC North division, so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they announced the creamsicle uniforms. They're going to wear them Week 6 against the Lions, probably to emphasize the point that the Buccaneers have won this division more recently than the Lions. No big deal. But, hey, don't worry, the Lions are going to take it this year. Fantastic. But I love the Bucco Bruce creamsicle look, and I think the Bucs uniforms now are pretty awesome since they got rid of like the digital number font, which was stupid. But Bucco Bruce and the orange, and I understand like it's tied with a bunch of losing from the early seasons of that expansion club, but woo, it looks good. But I think it's one of those things where it's nostalgia, and it's good because it's not always around. It's like the McRib. Like, people get really fired up about the McRib, but if it's on the menu every single day, be like, whatever. But it's like the creamsicle uniforms, where if these were the Bucs' normal uniforms, we'd get used to them and be like, yeah. But special occasions, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, man. I love it. That's the only downside for me being a Vikings fan, is that like there's not really many throwback uniform looks. Like we don't have a version of Bucco Bruce, but anyway, cycling through too quickly. Jim Marshall included in the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2024 semi-finalists. Now, he's headed towards the senior committee, and they could nominate up to 3 per season, and Jim Marshall absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He was the captain. He was the anchor of the Purple People Eaters 1.0. 270 games. He was the NFL's Iron Man. Never missed a start. Never missed a game. 135.5 sacks. After Pro Football Reference went back and counted. And he's a legend. He's an absolute legend. He was the heart and soul of that team. He was the true leader. He was Bud Grant's #1 guy, and I just hope that the stupid Pro Football Hall of Fame voters, I hope that they get it right while Jim Marshall is with us, because you see this happen so much. Like a guy, they keep him out of the Hall of Fame for whatever reason, and then he passes, then he gets in, and he doesn't get to enjoy it while he's here. His family doesn't get to enjoy it with him while he's here. So make this happen. Like, right this historical wrong. It's so absolutely stupid. Get him in. Jim Marshall deserves to be a Hall of Famer. And also, speaking of Vikings Hall of Fame defensive ends, maybe a little premature, but Danielle Hunter, absolute stud. I want to extend Danielle. I know he's 28, going to be 29. For my money, he's still one of the more elite edge rushers in the National Football League because he plays a run. Flores will find a spot for him, even though he's probably best suited as a close side of the field, strong side defensive end in a 4-3, hand the dirt. But he's putting in that work. He's been away from the team. Skip mandatory mini camp. TBD what happens in 2 weeks when training camp rolls around and veterans report. But I'm knocking down all the wood. Hopefully something works out with Danielle, because I think that he needs to stay in purple. I think that the Vikings defense is much better with him in the fold, and I hope that cooler heads prevail, and then they work something out. And finally, so Netflix is on a roll, man. So they got the quarterback documentary. They had the Manti Te'o doc last year, which was great. And now they're in the same vein as Manti Te'o. They're doing the untold Johnny Football story, where, I mean, Johnny Football at Texas A&M back in the day was a dude. Obviously didn't work out in the NFL, but I bring this up because it'll be a fascinating story of a meteoric rise and meteoric fall. But also, so he was drafted by the Browns first round 2014. In 2015, his head coach of the Browns was Mike Pettin. His offensive coordinator was John DeFilippo. And his quarterback coach was first-time assistant coach Kevin O'Connell. So we may get some KOC or some JDF or some Mike Pettin highlights in this documentary. We'd love to see it, man. Love to see it. But that's it. That's the Thursday news dump. Thanks for coming along, and let us know your thoughts. Ooh. Winfield Jr. Let's go. Let's go, man. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.